understanding covered calls. And we're going to ease into this topic step by step. And the first thing I'd like to say is what, in fact, is a covered call. Let's start very simple. A covered call is an options strategy. It has to do with options. It's a strategy which is applicable for certain types of traders. In fact, for traders who already own at least 100 shares of an optional stock. If you don't at least own 100 shares of an optional stock, you cannot use a covered call strategy. This is a prerequisite. So if you don't have in your portfolio at least 100 shares of a particular stock, which also is optionable, you cannot use a covered call strategy. There are similar strategies out there, like a poor man's covered call. We're going to get to this one a bit later in these Lunch and Learn sessions. But a true covered call is only possible if you own at least 100 shares of an optional stock. And the idea is of using this covered call strategy is to generate additional income simply by owning the stock. Which, first of all, sounds like a cool idea. Well, why not? Why not get additional income? Maybe I can double dip. Yeah, I benefit from the stock increasing in price and I get some additional premiums. Why not? Well, there of course are some downsides to this. Of course, nothing is only positive. Yeah, if it sounds too good to be true, there must be something where some kind of risk comes along as well. And the risk in this particular case for covered calls, as you can, for those of you who are trading covered calls, you will know this. The risk is that you may be forced to sell your shares. That is your risk. I put the risk in quotes because there is a variant of a covered call. In fact, it happened to me, or it happens to me as we speak, where I actually would like my shares to be called away because I don't really want this particular share in my portfolio anymore. It's my intent to sell those shares. And I want to, in addition to selling these shares at the price I want to sell that, I also want to collect some extra premiums. But for most cases, this is not what you want. This was a bit of an outlier. In most cases, it would be considered a risk that your shares you might be forced to sell your shares. And by the way, this would then be called your shares have been called away. Now, this is where this name comes from, the covered call, because your shares might be called away. Okay, now, but let's ease into this even further. Now, what is important, and this applies to anyone who wants to use a covered call strategy. What is important is that you need to determine for yourself, this is highly subjective and personal, you need to determine what is the minimum price at which you would be selling your shares. What price would that be? You already own the shares. At what price would you be to sell the shares if you had to? You need to come up with that number for yourself. I cannot really help you with that number because it's highly subjective and personal. It really depends on, what is your personal objective with your stock portfolio. Perhaps you want to open up some room in your portfolio. You want to just get rid of some shares, some stocks in there. Or it also depends on where did you buy this stock. It's a nice profit right now. Maybe it's time to book some profits. All these things need to be discussed to come up. What is this minimum price at which you'll be willing to sell the shares? This is something you need to come up with for yourself. And the answer is absolutely crucial because it will determine your covered call strategy. And in particular, it will determine how you pick your strike price for the covered call strategy. So once you use it, please think about this first. What is this minimum price at which you'll be willing to sell your shares? Because it may happen. This is a risk where you'll be forced to sell your shares. You don't know what will be the price be for this. Let's check out an example. This is something which is happening to me right now. So for those of you who've been joining us for at least a year now in our Lunch and Learn sessions and in our scanning session, you may remember a stock called Cintas Corporation. They create or provide uniforms for all kinds of professions, but also some utilities and so forth. That's a big company. It's in the S&P 500, I believe. Cintas Corporation. And this stock used to be in a very solid uptrend. This was last year. So price, came up. And then last year in, I'd say June, perhaps, prices retraced down to this red line here. Do you see this one here? This was, at the time, a support level. And I decided at the time, okay, perhaps I'm going to play this setup to the long side. In fact, I did this and anticipate how this stock is going to bounce off this level towards higher price levels. So I ended up owning this stock at this price here, around 210. That was my entry price, and give or take, this level here. I decided to buy it. Of course, this didn't pan out as expected. Yeah, not every support level holds. Prices came down much, much further, even all the way down to like 156 here. Yeah, lost quite a bit. But as of late, this stock has rallied up. So now I was coming close to my entry price. And, I have some other ideas of my portfolio. My idea was, okay, I will sell Cintas Technology if I'm at my entry price again. I want to get rid of the stock. I collected some premiums along the way. Overall, this would have been a profitable trade. But now it's time to move on. I would like to get rid of the stock. I don't want this stock in my portfolio anymore. So what I could do then is I could simply put my profit target here around 210 and then sell my share. That's one way to do it. But perhaps there's another way to do it. Because what you can also do is to sell calls with a strike price of perhaps 210, maybe 215. That's exactly what I've done. I'm going to get to this as well. Because in that way, you will collect the premium for selling your calls. Yeah. And if the stock stays below the strike price, okay, I collect the premium and perhaps I can sell it again in a month or so. Or if the price will continue higher, eventually I will be called away, which is my intent anyways, but I get to keep the premium. That's the idea of a covered call strategy. But let's back up a little bit. So a covered call strategy is all about selling call options to collect option premiums. And what's important is that the strike price for these call options should be equal or greater than the minimum price at which you're willing to sell these shares. That's very important if you want to make this a success. For the expiration date, and of course, there are many different opinions out there, but in my view, it should be about 1 month out. Why not longer? Because by selling options, we also want to benefit from what's called time decay. And time decay kicks in more and more the closer the expiration date is. So if you're too long out, not only you're locking up the stock for a very long time, but also you're not really maximizing the time decay. So we suggest about 1 month out. Okay, so what I've done then, in this case, I have sold the 210 calls with an expiration of August 21st, which at the time was about 1 month out. So the stock price was around this level here, around 202 or 203, and I sold the 210 calls with an expiration of August 31st. And for this, I have collected a premium of $700. And to me, this was an interesting approach, and I liked it, the way I planned this out, because if we stay below the 210 level, I get to keep the entire premium. If the price goes above this level, and right now the price is above this level, around 215, my shares eventually will be called away for a sales price of 210. That's my strike price. But in addition to this, I get to keep my premium of $700. So to me, that was a strategy I was comfortable with, and I decided to sell a covered call exactly the way it is. Okay, but now, of course, this doesn't always happen like this. And let's talk about when, in fact, should I use a covered call strategy. And perhaps the best way to approach this is to discuss first, when should I not use a covered call strategy, when it is not appropriate. All right, so here are a couple of points. Do not use a covered call strategy when you are not willing to be called away. This risk is always there. There are things that you can do to mitigate this risk, for sure, but it cannot be completely avoided. So you need to be open to the thought that, hey, my shares might be called away. If this is not an option for you, don't use a covered call strategy. You need to be willing to accept this risk. Of course, we can do things to avoid this, but the risk is still there. It cannot be completely eliminated. Number one, important. Number two, don't use a covered call strategy when the stock price is well below your target selling price. Why? Let's check out an example for this. All right, let's go to Tesla. I'm going to actually open up Tesla first on our dashboard. Of course, you know, Tesla had some difficulties as of late. All right, so I'm going to open Tesla here, and we can see, okay, so Tesla now is trading at around, I don't know, $300, give or take. And let's say, hypothetically, I don't own Tesla stocks, but hypothetically, you could say maybe maybe my entry price, let's say, for Tesla when I bought the shares originally was perhaps around maybe $385. Let's say this is my minimum price at which I would like to sell Tesla, which would coincide with this, you know, former support level here. Maybe use this level here as your entry point, anticipating, okay, price is going to bounce at this level towards higher price levels. Let's just assume this, you know, my minimum price at which I would like to sell my Tesla shares if I get called away is 385. But of course, prices are right now at around 300. So it's quite far away. And let's see how much premium you would actually get for this strategy. So I'm going to go over to Options Strat. We're going to open up Tesla. And by the way, I use this tool all the time to price out my option strategies. So I'm going to go to Tesla here. It's opening up. And let's say I want to go about 1 month out, maybe the August 21st expirations. And I'm looking to sell a call. Actually, let me start from scratch here. I'm looking to sell a call. That's what covered calls are, the short calls. Sell a call at around 385. That was the strike price which we pointed out. And the price here at which we are willing to sell Tesla, 385, give or take. Okay, so how much premium would we actually get for this? Well, only $99 for a position. Remember, you must have at least 100 shares of Tesla, which is worth $38,000 or $30,000 right now. That's nothing. That's peanuts. Premiums are so low because the strike price is so far away. It doesn't really make sense to sell. Well, it doesn't really give you anything. So what you can do, if you want to get more premiums, and if this is your minimum price, the only thing you can do to get more premium is to go further out. Maybe I should go out to maybe October 18. Okay, I accept my expiration date. Now we're 3-4 months out. I would get $640. That's more reasonable. Or maybe even further out to Gen 15. I would get $1,000 or $1,800. This is what you would need to do. But you know what? Even this is not ideal to me because you would lock in this stock for such a long time, which takes away your flexibility. Because, you know, with covered calls, you want to generate these premiums quite frequently. So back to my original, don't use covered calls when the stock price is well below your target selling price. Because if that's the case, premiums are very low. And if you want to increase them, you have to go much further out with your expiration date to get any form of meaningful income, which will lock up your shares for a long time, reduce your flexibility. Instead, what I would do is I would wait for the stock to recover. Because of Tesla, I would patiently wait for Tesla to come back up closer to the desired selling price and then start selling these covered calls. That's something I would do instead. Don't sell them down here. This is not the right time. You want the stock to come up first. Okay? So wait for the stock to recover and move closer to your minimum selling price. All right, let's talk about the ideal outcome for most covered call strategy. For most traders, that's the case. It was not the case for my Cintas idea because I wanted to get rid of this position. But for most traders, the ideal outcome of a covered call strategy is if at expiration the stock is trading below your strike price. That way you get to keep your full premium. You don't have to sell your shares, and you can simply repeat the process on selling another covered call. This is typically the ideal outcome. Now let's think about what can we do to reduce the odds and reduce the chances of having your shares called away. Because oftentimes that's not ideal for most covered call strategies. You want to keep your shares. Okay, what can we do? Well, the first technique, and I used this with Cintas to some extent, of course, it didn't work out perfectly, but the first technique is you will pick a strike price that also coincides with a technical resistance level on your chart. Here's an example. Let me go back quickly to the dashboard. Let's start with Cintas first. I liked the 210 strike price. Why? Because it coincides with this key technical level. You can see this green level here exactly at 210. That's why I picked it. In fact, 210 is a bit above. I like this one. This level didn't end up holding. Prices are now a bit higher, but nonetheless, that was my idea. One price may bounce off this technical level to the low side. I get to collect the premium, and maybe then I can sell covered calls again afterward, maybe 1 month later. We'll see what happens. For Cintas, since I'm willing to get rid of the stock, I will just simply won't do anything. It's gonna let my call expire. If it get called away, that's fine. This was my intent anyways, to get rid of the stock, to remove the stock from my portfolio. Okay, but let's say this is not something that should happen to you. How can we find stocks which are currently near a key resistance level, where it makes sense to, perhaps sell covered calls? Well, what we can do in our scanner is we can go for stocks which are actually optionable with at least weekly and daily expirations. Just make sure the option chain is also liquid. So daily and weekly expirations, we have 600 or 515 stocks to choose from. And what we can do is we can see, okay, which of these symbols currently are actually trading near resistance level. Actually, that's a scan we don't run very often. What we can do is we can use our Liquidity IQ setup column here and pick what's called short bounce. So what is short bounce? Well, short bounce means that we are currently, similar to like Annette here, we're currently near resistance level. Look at this one here. Now, Annette, for example, is near a resistance level. And perhaps, picking a strike price for your covered call strategy just above this resistance level is not such a bad idea. Because resistance may act as resistance and price may bounce off this level towards lower price levels. Yeah. Another example here, let's just pick one here. Harmon Aerospace, also currently trading at resistance. It's also at the all-time highs here, but nonetheless, we're hitting resistance here. We may see a bounce off this level towards lower price level. This is something you can do, to pick a strike price, which also coincides with a key technical level on your chart. The second thing that you can do is you will buy back the calls that you sold when they're about 60 to 75% in profit. Don't wait until expiration, because lots of things can happen until expirations. There might be a jump in stock price and you might get called away. We recommend to buy back your calls when the premiums have decayed by 60 to 75%. You buy them back much cheaper as what you sold them for. That's profit. And thirdly, what you also can do, and many covered call option traders do it that way, if you notice, like with Cintas here, let me go back to Cintas real quick. If you notice that, you might be you're getting close to your strike price, like here with 210, price here exactly at 210, and you really don't want to be called away. What you can do is you can roll out your position, meaning you will buy back this covered call. You will make a loss for that buyback, but then you will sell another covered call at a higher strike price, maybe for 220, and a longer expiration. And ideally, what you will get for that covered call will make up for the losses that you incurred for the first covered call. This is called rolling out your position, or rolling your position. Okay, that's the third thing you can do. All right, so that was my opinion about what covered calls are and when they should be used and when they should not be used.